Welcome back. Honestman, here with more Dragon's Dogma, Dark Arisen. This episode is going to be a little bit of a follow-up to episode number 2, where we took our first trip into Bitterblack Isle. In this episode, I'm going to highlight some additional points of interest within the Isle, and we're going to take on the Dark Bishop. I've managed to stay busy since the prior episode. I gave the Everfall a good once-over. I did not kill the Dragon, but otherwise cleared out most of the floors. In addition, I've been spending a lot of time in Bitterblack Isle here. With these endgame dungeons, combined with the Blessed Flower, experience and level ups come rapidly. So as you can see, I am level 120 currently. As I mentioned previously, the game plan was always 10 levels of Fighter, followed by 90 levels of Warrior, followed by 100 levels of Assassin. So once I hit 100, I switched into Assassin and haven't looked back since. What I haven't mentioned previously, however, is that once I hit 200, the plan is to pivot into Strider. I think Strider has the best combination of tools and skills and abilities, and they just have tremendous damage potential. So what that means is that during this phase of the game, I'm sort of steering my character with that eventual Strider build in mind to try to target specific pieces of equipment. And being Assassin for these 100 levels makes that transition pretty easy, actually, because Assassin gear tends to overlap a little bit between some Warrior stuff and some Strider stuff. So I'm picking up certain pieces, like shortbow, like daggers, for example, in preparation for that transition to Strider. Meanwhile, for my main pawn, he is Warrior. The game plan was always 10 levels of Fighter and then 190 levels of Warrior. Certainly, if he had access to the elite classes like Assassin, I would mirror my main build, but he doesn't have those, so Warrior is the best we can do here. And I think the game plan for him is that once he hits 200, I'm going to steer him towards Sword and Board Fighter. So that makes his equipment super easy to plan. There's basically 100% overlap between Warrior and Fighter in terms of equipment loadout, with the exception of weapons, of course. But for armor pieces, he's right on track. Speaking of equipment, I'm going to quickly overview my current state. My main pawn here still running the Bloody Thistle. And honestly, I think there's just tremendous value with the silver rarefied Bloody Thistle. I feel like this is really, really strong. I have a hard time imagining changing out of this until I'm into like Bitterblack level 3 weapons. For the headpiece, obviously we're still rocking the Immortal's Helm, leveled up to silver rarefied. Chest piece, we have Dragon Forged Dragon Leather and silver rarefied Malorian Plate. Gold rarefied Blessed Sleeves, and then silver rarefied Twisted Leathers and Assault Boots. For the cloak, we have a gold rarefied Beastly Mantle. And then for accessories, I have 2 barbed nails. This is an accessory that I mentioned earlier in the series, but I didn't really elaborate on it very much. Once Madeline's inventory expands enough, you'll be able to buy these from her, and each one gives you plus 100 to your knockdown. So as you can see, my main pawn has 692 stagger and knockdown power right now. Looking forward, in this phase of the game, which is sort of, I'll call it phase 2, in reference to Bitterblack level 2, we're not to 3 yet, we're sort of in that 2 phase. I feel really good about my accessories here. I feel really good about my cloak, that's not going to change until phase 3. I feel great about my clothing and leg armor. The Twisted Leather Pants, I consider these final leg clothing for a male character. Assault Boots, still love the Assault Boots. It's sort of, this is the decision point, this is the pivot point where, do you shift from Assault Boots into Immortal leggings? I think there's an argument to be made there. It depends on what you value more, the defense or the extra attack power. Either way, I don't see this as a pain point, so I'm not in a rush to change out my boots here. Certainly will eventually swap that in phase 3. The arms, even though I have gold rarefied Blessed Sleeves here, I'd really like to change these. I'd really like to get these into Immortal. Same with my chest armor. I think the Malorian Plate has served me well, but its time has come. I really want to get into an Immortal coat here. For the chest clothing, I've got the dragon leather vest. That's okay for now. Ultimately, I want to get another abyssal outfit. And the way you get that is from killing the dragon. So we're going to have to put a pin in that until we cycle through to New Game Plus and kill the dragon again. That's definitely on my radar, but not quite yet. I feel really good about the Immortal's helmet at this phase of the game, but I might entertain the Tormentor's mask if we get one, because it gives a plus 50 to knockdown. And then, as I mentioned earlier, feel really good about the Bloody Thistle at Silver Rarefied until we get to Phase 3. The good news on most of the equipment that I just mentioned is that you don't have to mess around trying to purify level 2 Bitterblack armors. Instead, you can get the Immortal's kit as quest rewards. As you can see here, Wages of Death 1 and Wages of Death 2 award the Immortal's boots and the Immortal's bracers, respectively. This involves killing Garms and Elder Ogres, which aren't trivial enemies, but nothing we can't handle at this point. As you can see, I've already killed 4 Garms and 3 Elder Ogres. In addition, there's a quest that I don't have yet, which will award the Immortal's coat. And that's part of what we're working towards today. Because in order to access that quest, which is by Royal Decree 2, we have to get to the Arisen's Refuge. The Arisen's Refuge is another safe haven within Bitterblack Isle that has a notice board. So we need to get to that notice board to be able to get that quest. But in order to get there, we have to kill the Dark Bishop. So that's why that's on the checklist today. Switching over to Mary, I am still dragging around the Dragon's Band. And this is helpful because I do try to gain ranks into Strider right now. So as I'm doing those gymnastics, switching vocations, I'll switch into the Dragon Band as needed. Certainly when it gets down to business, I'm in the Immortal's Helm in my Assassin's build at the moment. For chest clothing, I have the aforementioned Abyssal outfit at Dragonforge level, as well as a 3-star trophy jacket. This jacket I obtained from Duskmoon Tower, using a Moonbeam gem for one of the treasure rooms. For arms, we have Dragonforge Crested Arm Guards. For legs, we have Silver Rarefied Assault Boots and Dragonforged Delta Guard. More on that in a second. I'm currently using the Dragon's Knight Cloak for my cloak. That gives me plus 12 fire resistance. And then for accessories, I have a Preceptor Ring, which is 52 strength, as well as a bunch of possession resistance, as well as a Master Ring that gives me really good resistance, 88 to Petrification and 82 to Drenched. Obviously, I'm equipping this because of the Petrification resistance. Looking forward for Mary in this phase, I'm going to be switching up my cloak to a Divine Embrace cloak, which is a level 2 Bitterblack armor. For the boots, it's the exact same situation as my main pawn. Assault boots are great during this phase. I don't really see myself changing those until we get to phase 3. And then Delta Guard. This is the best leg clothing in the game, in my opinion. I mean, I think it's a pretty objective statement. This is very, very good. Second best isn't half as good as this. Unfortunately, it is restricted to women. So this is almost enough to tempt me into changing my main pawn to a woman in my New Game Plus, but I don't think I'm going to go to those lengths necessarily. It's not quite that good, but it's real, real good. So we are all set there for the rest of the game. This is our end game leg clothing. Similarly, for chest clothing, the Abyssal outfit is our final clothing. So she's all set there. As soon as I can rarefy that further, I definitely will. And I think the trophy jacket at this point in the game as well is exactly where I want to be for phase 2. Obviously, I want to get that Dragon Forged and then rarefied after that, but otherwise this is the right equipment. For headgear, the Immortal's Helm is exactly where I want to be right now. This is great for phase 2. Certainly it's not equipable by Striders, however. So once I hit level 200, I'm going to need to address this, but I expect we'll be phase 3 by that point. For weapons, I currently have the Fey Whisper, which is serviceable. It's not really where I want to be, but this sort of gets me into a little bit of a tangent talking about elemental weapons. really the upgrade from here is a fire bow, and I expect I'll have that before too long. But the problem with the fire bow, or any other fire weapon for that matter, is that certain enemies like hellhounds are actually strengthened if you hit them with fire. And there's other various resistances you have to consider. Certain enemies are highly resistant. Is that enough to make you forego elemental weapons entirely? Maybe not, but that's kind of where I'm at. I don't want to have to carry around multiple different weapons and constantly be juggling them. So for me, I'd rather just have a pure physical weapon to complement my pure physical build. So suffice to say, rocking Fey Whisper right now, but there's really not a good upgrade until you get all the way to tier 3. So once we get into that tier 3 gear, upgrading this bow is going to be a very high priority. But for now, we're just going to have to make do. If we kill the dragon, we can get a better bow. It's not tremendously better, but it could be a little bit better. So that's a consideration, but not on my immediate radar. And then for daggers, I have the Helmbarte daggers, which is a Bitterblack level 2. And I think these are great. This is another one where there's a fire option sort of at this tier in this phase. And again, it's just sort of that trade-off of it's good against some enemies, not against the others. You kind of have to juggle weapons a little bit. I'd much rather just stick straight strength. This is a straight strength build. Give me a straight strength weapon. So that's kind of my strategy. Jumping back to arms, I didn't forget arms. I saved them for last. I've got the Crested Arm Guards right now. That gives me vocation, versatility. I can use these as both Assassin and Strider, and they're decent. So there's not urgency here per se, but really what I'd rather have is the Trophy Bracers. And this is where I dropped the ball. This quest in Aid of the Emerald King 4 awards the Trophy Bracers. But I screwed up because I thought that this was a post-game quest, and it's not. You have to complete this earlier in the game. And the reason is because the specific region of the Everfall in question is the Pawn Guild basement, where we ran down and back out. That's where you need to go. But that area is destroyed once you get into the post-game. So I can't complete this at this point. Certainly I'll chalk this up for my New Game Plus. I can knock it out then. But I'll have a reminder in the appropriate video description, so hopefully other folks don't make the same mistake that I did. Now that we're caught up on equipment, let's talk Bitterblack Isle. As sort of an addendum to episode 2, I do want to highlight a few chests. Certainly after that first expedition, my subsequent expeditions were more aggressive, which means I was taking on more and more enemies every time and clearing deeper and deeper within reason. One of the chests in particular that I want to highlight is the chest at the very top of the Midnight Helix, which is right next to where we grabbed the Void Key. That chest is a guaranteed Bitterblack level 3 novelty. Novelties aren't like game-changing or anything like that, but definitely be aware of that. I was always grabbing that on my subsequent trips through. Similarly, once you're able to clear out all the sorcerers in that room, there's a chest that you need to be able to jump to, or the way I would do it, since I couldn't jump effectively, jump onto the gargoyle in the Midnight Helix, have him fly you up. There's a ledge that's hard to get to. There's a chest there that has a chance for a Rift Polycrystal, which is worth 5,000 Rift Crystals. Very helpful when you're just starting out. There are also a bunch of chests in the Ward of Regret that have a chance for a Rift Bicrystal, which is 2,000. Those are worth spending some time on if you're really trying to pull together crystals as well. And oftentimes I was. And I also want to call it the Vault of Defiled Truth. That's the one that has the cockatrice near the end. There's 3 chests in that exact room with the cockatrice that are on the upper level that have a chance for a Rift Bicrystal as well. And 2 of those 3 also have a chance for Bitterblack Gear level 2. So as soon as I was able to get into there, I was definitely availing myself of those. And then more recently, I've just begun killing the cockatrice as well. Last but not least, before we start looking forward instead of backward, the Gutter of Misery. In episode 2, I ran in through here to waymarker number 1 to grab a chest that has a chance for Bitterblack level 2 gear. And then I portaled out. On subsequent trips, I was always sure to come into waymarker number 2. That chest has a chance for a Bitterblack armor level 1. So that's a great way to accumulate early armors. As I got stronger, I began clearing the enemies throughout the Gutter of Misery here, and then getting through to the exit. There's multiple chests down here. There's some that have the chance for rift clusters, but the chest at waymarker number 3 has a chance for a bi-crystal. So by and large, I would call that sort of my regular trip to Bitterblack Isle through the mid-game, and then I started teasing through this door as well. Now, in this zone, the Shrine of Futile Truths, this is a boss encounter. Your first time in here, once you pass under about here, a gazer, which is a giant eyeball, will descend from the ceiling and nuke you with a bunch of status effects. You're almost certainly going to go blind. And my tip there is just don't panic. I would suggest getting back out the door or portal out of this area. And what that does is when you subsequently come back in, he's already going to be spawned. He's not going to get his little ambush on you anymore. So that's going to give you a big advantage starting out the combat. In addition, having ranged options will make the encounter a lot easier for you. Unfortunately, I did not have any ranged options. I think I was around character level 80, give or take, when we came through here. So I was still running Warrior at that point in time. And if you are doing the same, the best advice I can give you is just jump onto him. And probably the higher up, the better. Jump onto his big spherical body and just clamber around over the top of the eyeball and then just start hacking away. It's not terribly difficult at that point. Certainly part of his gimmick is the status attacks, and you might fall prey to that. You probably will fall prey to that a couple times, even if you avoid the initial ambush. But if you have a couple of mages capable of healing status effects, and or if you bring along some consumables, you'll get by. It was not a terribly difficult encounter. Last but not least, I want to highlight this chest, which is the very first chest on the left-hand side as you're coming down into this zone. This has a chance for a rift bi-crystal. So even before I was ready to actually take on the gazer, I'd sprint into here, run down to the chest, grab it, and then portal out. The rest of the chests in this area aren't particularly noteworthy in my opinion, so I was really just focused on the one for the crystals. Passing through the Corridor of Emptiness, this gives us a way back to the harbor, so that makes a nice shortcut. I could have come straight through there if I wanted to. And our buddy is sometimes sitting here as well to talk to and rarefy things for us. The next zone is the Fortress of Remembrance. And this is a very important zone for a couple of reasons. First is that this is another encounter point for death. Your first time here, death will spawn, and just go back out. I'm going to pass through the enemies just because I'm trying to be quick here. There's a lot of chests in this area that have a chance for crystals or bi-crystals. And there's a cluster, for example. The skeletons here, the gargantuan skulls that these drop may be useful to you for upgrades. I needed to get some. I don't remember for what, but it was something good. The first door on the left here goes to the Pilgrim's Gauntlet. There's a couple chests in there that have a chance for Bitterblack Gear level 2. Which may be worth your time. You'll need to go into there initially to get a void key, so make note of that. There's also probably going to be a cursed dragon, or possibly a cursed dragon, which, on the bright side, is an excellent opportunity to dragon forge weapons. Much better than the dragons in the overworld. When you get to this section with the succubus, you want to grab onto one of them and get it to carry you up just one level. And then here, if it's your first time, there'll be a macabre sculpture here. But there's also a Bitterblack Gear 2. And that respawns when the area respawns. The chests here can be good for crystals. So definitely check that out if you are feeling tapped out. There's a bi-crystal there. When you get down to the level that has the entrance to the Black Abbey, or hereabouts, you'll run into a big strong boy. And you may or may not want to take him on. He has good drops, so if you're brave, I would recommend killing him. So your first time into this zone, you're probably not going to want to take him on. He might be a little above your weight class, so to speak. So you might just run through, and what you want to do is come around to the side here and drop down. There's another chest here, but what we're really after is further down. And I'm going to skip some chests here just because it's not really critical path. The chest on the right, this is what you want. This is your first chance at Bitterblack level 2 armor. So standard operating procedure, you certainly want to make a save prior to opening the chest so that you're sure to get the armor. But I would take it a step even further than that. I would make a hard copy, so to speak. I would copy your actual game save file, presuming you're on PC and you can do so. I would copy that file somewhere else. And the reason is because I had spoken at the beginning of episode 3 about the purification process and how you get seeded into a long list of numbers. So you can't really game that. You're going to get the same outcome every time once you're in that list. But what you can game is your initial entry point into the list. And the entry point is determined at the time you pick up your first item of that type and rarity. In other words, the very first time you acquire a Bitterblack level 2 armor, that is the point at which you get seeded into a list for that specific type and rarity. So if we make a hard save here, get the armor, lift stone out of here, purify it, see what it is. If it's not what you want, go back to your hard save and then redo it. The point at which you pick that armor up is the point you get seeded into the list. So I would keep doing that until you get what you want. And specifically for level 2, I think it's a no-brainer. As I highlighted near the beginning, there are various quests that reward you with level 2 armors, like the Immortals set, like the Trophy set. So there's other ways to get those items, but what there is not another way to do is to get the Delta Guard. So if you have even one female character between yourself and your main pawn, which I would recommend, I think women are the way to go here because of equipment like this. If you have even one woman in your group, get the Delta Guard. Purifying a level 2 Bitterblack armor is literally the only way to get this item. And like I said earlier, it's the best leg clothing in the entire game. So for me, I kept re-rolling this until I got Delta Guard. It actually only took me 2 tries, so I felt a little lucky. But that's what I'd recommend doing. And then use quests to fill out your Immortal gear and your Trophy gear. So certainly if it's your first time through, you would lift stone out at this point. But otherwise, you would collect your armor and head through this door, which would initially be barred. But this gives you some more traversal options. And before we go forward, I'm going to backtrack to the Abbey. Jerk. Alright, we got an Elder Ogre here by chance, so I'm going to do it to it. And he is just getting murdered. That was a massacre. So that was unexpected and fortunate. We're one step closer to getting our Immortal Bracers. Back up to the floor where we jumped down previously. We want to take this door to the Black Abbey. The Black Abbey is an arena of sorts that will respawn every time you walk in here. The treasures won't respawn every time, but the enemies will. So if you really wanted to farm XP, for example, this is actually a great place to do that. We're not here for the XP, though. We are here for a chest on the north side. There's 2 chests here. The one on the left is the one we're after. Of course, make a save, but again, I'd go ahead and make a hard save because this should be your first Bitterblack level 2 weapon. We didn't get it there. This spot is particularly easy to farm because you don't even need to God's Bane. You can just jump to your death and reload that way.
Open your eyes.
So when it comes to level 2 weapons, I think there's going to be a lot of variation depending on what you're after and what your build is. For me personally, I went with the dagger. And that might be a hot take. There's a lot of people that might lose their minds over that pick. But again, I just felt like I wanted a pure strength weapon. And the margin between this as a pure strength dagger and the level 3 dagger is actually very thin. Like there's not a huge value upgrade from this to the level 3 dagger. So I felt like this was a good investment. Certainly your mileage may vary here, so definitely target whatever you think is going to provide the most value for you. Like I said, I really like the level 2 daggers here because I feel like that takes the pressure off of trying to get level 3 daggers because the damage is so close. The level 3 daggers have much better knockdown, so there's still value, don't get me wrong. But I think it frees me up to go red with my level 3 weapons. And the reason that's desirable is because the red selections have 6 options. So if you're trying to target something specific in red, like the Devil's Bane sword, for example, that's going to be a much better play than trying to target something specific in yellow, because there's only 4 options in yellow. So the number of options are much lower. And then if you're in blue, blue only has 2 options at level 3. So if you're a mage, I feel like that feels super easy to get what you're after there. It's a coin flip. You got a 50-50 shot, basically. But suffice it to say, with 6 different options in the red category, I think that makes the most sense for targeting a level 3 weapon. Obviously, I really want the level 3 bow, but there's only 4 options there. I like my odds much better than trying to get 1 out of 6 on the reds. And there we go. That only took a handful of tries this time. Level 2 weapon. And in hindsight, I probably really should have recommended the hard save tactic for the earlier Bitterblack equipment as well. But there's just so many good armors. It's hard to go wrong there for very long. And weapons, I suppose if I had really targeted the Bloody Thistle sooner, that would have been beneficial. That's probably the pro play if you really want to do it. So with our equipment gathering out of the way for now, we move forward. The Tower of Treason's Repaid. This is basically the same sort of layout as the Midnight Helix, but you're starting from the top instead of the bottom. In the lower levels of the zone, this is another area across the bridge here that's particularly noteworthy. I've already cleared it, but the chest in the back here is the chance for another Bitterblack level 2 armor, so don't miss that. Moving on to the Forsaken Cathedral. This is our destination. Ooh, another ogre. There we go. And quest complete. That gives us our Immortal's Bracers for our main pawn. And just like the helmet, they continuously restore health. So it increases the potency of that effect. These don't hold up to my gold rarefied Blessed Sleeves right now, however. So we're going to have to hold off until we can upgrade that a little bit, and then we'll make the switch. After you follow the circular staircase down and arrive at this room on the 3rd floor, the chest on the right is yet another chance for a Bitterblack level 2 armor. When you reach the bottom of this final flight of stairs on the 1st floor, the game will mysteriously autosave, which portends danger. So this is your last chance to prepare. Something that I didn't mention earlier is a quick skills check. You can see my loadout for Assassin here. Cutting Wind and 100 Kisses I think are both very good in my view. And I really like my bow setup, honestly. 5-fold Flurry, Plegic Arrow, and Mighty Bend. Dazzle Blast on the dagger I'm not crazy about. I'm playing around trying to find something better there. And then for our main pawn, the Windmill Slash that I had previously that launched enemies straight up, that starts to lose utility further into the game when enemies become harder to launch. So I switched into Exodus Slash because of its invulnerability frames. It's pretty nice. Still keeping Indomitable Lash, I think that's great, and the pawn AI definitely knows how to use it. And also running Pommel Bash. This is super situational, but helpful when ogres, for example, put up their guard. This will help break the guard. Specific preparations for the Dark Bishop include the Rusted Bow. This isn't strictly necessary, but it gives a little additional value. Once you start upgrading rusted weapons, they gain status debilitations. And in particular, this inflicts torpor. I wish I had this at higher level, but level 3 enhanced is the best I can do. Higher the level, the higher the chance to inflict. But we are going to equip this just for the torpor chance, which should work on both the bishop and the dragon. Much more importantly, I've brought 100 silencer arrows. These are readily available. You can buy these in Grand Soren, and they do exactly what they sound like. They inflict silence. So with those equipped, we are ready to rock and roll. Now, the high-level strategy here is to silence the bishop and then kill the dragon. The bishop has the ability to enter the dragon, and if he does that, possess him, that is. If he possesses the dragon, that's super bad news. Because that allows him to cast really powerful spells really quickly. Not having a lot of luck with the silence, honestly.
Help me! That spell is trouble.
There we go, he's silenced.
I've learned a new way to fight their
My support.
It's a mighty spellcaster.
Switch back into my regular bow here. Get some damage in.
Strike it from range.
I'll attack the first opening I see.
Let's see rid of those on land first. Dragon stands again.
At the risk of being cocky at this point in the fight, I'm switching to my Immortal Bracers, as well as my Dragon Band, and the Cursed Bite Sword. I didn't mention this previously, but I had this kicking around my inventory. It's a level 2 sword. Just switching into these, just in the hope that they get Dragon Forged here when we kill the Cursed Dragon.
The necromancer is vanished.
Come on, buddy. Alright, yeah, see, I was too cocky, but I think you would have had me anyway. I do have a Wake Stone, fortunately. I'm going to pop that and seal the deal here, I think. Get after him.
Finish it while it's down.
And there we go. Cursed Bite, Dragon Forged. And the bow.
What's that? Be sure we carry an ample store of oil to keep the
There's a
lantern
tangled
burning.
knot of paths inside.
So there we go. Did really well on the Dragon Forging. All the weapons that I brought to the Dragon Band. The Trophy Jacket, which is great. For additional loot in the area, we have a chest on the north side of the room
Perhaps?
that has a chance for a Bitterblack gear level 2. Much more importantly, however, if we look west above the door that we came in through, we see a hint. And you should be able to just climb up here. And it's another slab for the Monument of Remembrance. But keep going, because you can get all the way up. And following the path through, you find another chamber with 2 chests. Here, the chest on the right is another chance for a Bitterblack level 2 armor. There we go. Not that we really need it. As I said earlier, the Delta Guard is really the most important piece at level 2, and the rest we can just get through quest rewards. After we've collected all of our loot, we proceed forward to the Corridor of the Hallowed. This is another safe zone, just kind of connecting different zones, and our buddy is here once again. There should be a few items of note. There's another remembrance here. And we should have another sculpture over here. There it is. I just saw it.
Preparing a riftstone bears a cost.
Cob sculpture. There we go. And that's the path forward. But I think we've accomplished all we wanted to for now. We're going to head back to the docks. And there we go. Another shortcut unlocked. So we can quickly get back to that point. And I think that's going to be a wrap. Shout out to Saber and Beatrice, our public pawns, for accompanying us today. Also, a quick note that I forgot to mention. Reynard sells all of the rusted weapons, but he's not available if you've completed his quest. Not until New Game Plus, that is. However, if you're after a rusted bow, there is a chest in the Witchwood that has a decent chance. So there's other ways to get it. I'm going to scout further into the Isle. Again, our destination is the Arisen's Refuge, which has a notice board that'll let us get into the By Royal Decree quests and ultimately earn the Immortal Coat for our main pawn. So I'll check back once I've made more progress. Until then, thank you all so much. Please like and subscribe. This has been Honestman and Mary Abernathy, and we will see you next time with more Dragon's Dogma: Dark Arisen.